Questions for reflection. In our first reading from the prophet Amos, we hear good and joyful news from the prophet for the nation of Israel. This seems different than what we have been hearing. Over the days we've been hearing this book proclaimed as the first reading at Holy Mass, the Lord is correcting his people through the words of this powerful prophet. This excerpt from chapter 9, the last chapter of this relatively short book of the Hebrew Scriptures, we hear the important connection between the discipline of the Lord and his loving plan. Listen to this beautiful promise. These are the last words of the book of the prophet Amos, and I quote, "I shall restore the fortunes of my people Israel. They will rebuild the ruined cities and live in them. They will plant vineyards and drink their wine. They will lay out gardens and eat their produce. And I shall plant them in their own soil, and they will never be uprooted again from the country which I have given them, declares Yahweh, your God." End quote. This truth is also addressed in the New Testament letter to the Hebrews. In chapter 12, after the writer reminds the early believers and each one of us that we need to look to Jesus as the author and finisher of our faith, he explains the connection between the Lord's correction and discipline with his loving plan of restoration. And I quote, "My son, do not regard lightly the discipline of the Lord, nor lose courage when you are punished by him. For the Lord disciplines him whom he loves, and chastises every son whom he receives." It is for discipline that you have to endure. God is treating you as sons. For what son is there whom his father does not discipline? If you are left without discipline, in which all have participated, then you are illegitimate children and not sons. End quote. The writer of this letter is quoting from the Proverbs, chapter 3, verses 11 and 12. The Lord's discipline in our own lives, his correction, is always because he loves us and wants us to be happy and free. Do we believe this? And David, the psalmist, in our response, reiterates this important truth, and I quote, "His saving help is near for those who fear him. His glory will dwell in our land. Loyalty will spring up from the earth, and justice will lean down from heaven. Yahweh will himself give prosperity, and our soil will yield its harvest. Justice will walk before him, treading out a path." In the gospel appointed for today's Holy Mass, Jesus answers a question as to why his disciples did not fast like the disciples of John. He answers, "Surely the bridegroom's attendants cannot fast while the bridegroom is still with them. As long as they have the bridegroom with them, they cannot fast. But the time will come when the bridegroom is taken away from them, and then on that day they will fast." He, Jesus, is the bridegroom. The church is the bride. While he was still with us in his earthly ministry, there was no need to fast. But, and here is one of the first references from the Lord of his impending arrest, voluntary suffering and death, resurrection and ascension. He tells them that he will be taken away. And in fact, all of this happened. And fasting became and still is a part of the way of life of his bride, the church, until he returns. Then he uses an image which his hearers would understand well. Mending a cloak which needs a patch and the use of old and new wineskins. His message? In him new has come. With him the old covenant, while not abrogated, is to be fulfilled, so that the new covenant can begin and welcome the whole world into its embrace.